been over this ground before. There's also the question of, it's a word that hasn't come up much this evening, but it might as well, capital E, evidence. There doesn't seem to be any evidence at all of an afterlife in which all wrongs are righted and all sins are punished. But there is a thing called law, and there is a thing called human solidarity, with which we attempt to make life more fair and more just in the only life that we know we've got. And we'd have to do that, even if, and religious societies do that, even if we thought there was a higher justice and a life to come. We would still have to act as if we had to discipline ourselves and others in the here and now. So adding the supernatural dimension to it, making the God assumption, doesn't make any of these urgent questions, how shall we live with each other, what are our duties, any easier to solve.
Contrary to, I think, what Christopher is implying there, Christ's central purpose was not to come to make bad people good. He came to make dead people live.
Mr. Hitchens, I was just wondering, do you believe that religion has some origin in the need for political leaders in early human civilization to instill a fear and sense of authority in the ruled classes?
Well, there is a functional and also a functionalist and man-made element to religion isn't doubted by anyone, certainly not by Frank Turek. He would say about the Aztec priesthood, that's all it was a means of coercion by the ruling class and a means of terrifying others and a means of making them believe that there was a priesthood that could control things like eclipses or heal things like plagues. Yes, of course. When anyone looks at anyone else's religion, they see the trick being pulled easily. Everyone in this room is an atheist. There's not one of you who isn't. You don't believe in the Temple of Diana at Ephesus. You don't believe in the Egyptian Thor. You don't believe in Odin. You don't believe in Huatzicatl or the other Aztec gods. None of you do. You're all atheists as far as that's concerned. Some of you believe that one of these is okay and is true. I just say that I'll go you one better and say I'll be an atheist and I'll be a consistent one.
I'm not an atheist. I mean, I don't believe in Zeus or any of those other gods because all those other gods were inside the world. We have evidence that suggests that there's a being outside the world that created the universe. That's why I believe in him.
We have time for one final question before Dr. Turek's closing statement. Usher, choose wisely.
This is to Frank, but I would like Christopher's opinion on this as well. With regards to your mention of Paley's argument and your analogies, how do you grade complexity? Is there a cutoff point? And does it ever seem like you're taking credit away from the chaotic nature of chance and giving it to God?
Okay, chance is not a cause. Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. If I were to take out a coin right now and flip it, what are the chances it would come up heads? You say 50%. But what causes it to come up heads? Is it chance? No, chance doesn't do anything. What causes it to come up heads is the amount of force I put in it, the wind in the room, how high it is. If we could calculate all of those forces with precision, we could predict 100% every time whether it's going to come up heads or tails. So chance doesn't do anybody any good. We got time for
wasn't for me.
Can I suggest one thing? This isn't fair for me to do a closing statement and not him. I don't mind staying longer to have him do a closing statement, and I preferred for him to give one. And secondly, I'll stay for a few more questions if you want, if Christopher will as well.
No. Okay, I got them to beg. First law of show business: keep them wanting more. I don't want to stay any later because I'm extremely tired and have a very early start in the morning. But I do want to, and also the moment is coming when I won't be nice to anyone who hasn't got a receipt, because this is America and I have product to move.
Go ahead.
Look, so I think if you want a closing statement from me, I'll keep it very brief. I haven't had. This will be. I can't remember now how many public events this would count as. No one has even attempted to answer my central question, which is this: Why is there any reason to believe that I must be a less ethical person or have less morality available to me because I do not believe in a supernatural dictatorship? Why am I not just an atheist? In other words, I don't believe there was a prime mover or any need to believe in it. In other words, there is nothing left unexplained if that assumption is not made. That's why I'm an atheist. Why am I an atheist? Because I don't believe there has been a revelation of God. I don't believe he's ever shown himself to us. I think that the books in which this is claimed to have occurred are self-evidently man-made and show many, many signs of contradiction, of fabrication, of myth and legend, and of having been, as H.L. Mencken bluntly puts it, tampered with, and also because they cannot all be true, and they set people at odds with each other. I was once told by I was asked a question in turn by a famous religious broadcaster on the air. He said, you have to imagine the following. You are in a strange city, and it's late in the evening, and you don't know anyone, and you don't know your way around, and the night is coming on, and you see coming towards you a group of men. Now he says, you must answer this question. He said, do you feel better or worse, happier or less happy, safer or less safe, once you know that these men are coming from a prayer meeting? In my book, I try and answer the question. I say, well, just without leaving the letter B, I have been in those circumstances in the following cities: Belfast, Beirut, Bombay, Baghdad, and one other. Let's just do the first four. If anyone's ever spent any time in Belfast, they'd know right away to try and find a place of hiding and safety if they were caught on the streets when the churches were letting people out at dusk. Or there's hardly been a non-religious murder in Belfast in the last 30 years. It's a very dangerous place to be once the religious are abroad, especially if it's gangs of men, as specified in the question. Everything about Beirut could be absolutely wonderful. It's a jewel of a city on the eastern end of the Mediterranean. It's the capital of a wonderful country that has all kinds of resources and all kinds of attractions. And it's been, for decades, a hellhole because of the confessional system that insists that political power is allocated only to people who can show that they're members of a faith. It doesn't particularly matter in the Lebanese constitution which faith. There's a pecking order, but it has to be confessional. And as a result, Lebanon is retarded in its development, unsafe at almost any time of day, most especially when the churches and the mosques are letting people out onto the street. That's when to be most careful. To say that this was true in Belgrade and to say what effect religion had in the breakup of Yugoslavia, there is no ethnic difference between being a Serb and a Croat, for example, none whatever. It's a difference only between being Eastern Orthodox in the case of the Serb and Roman Catholic in the case of the Croat. And that's a killing matter. All across Western Herzegovina and Bosnia and larger tracts of the rest of the country, as soon as the churches started to let people out, having preached their doctrine about the heretical nature of the other Christians, the other believers, every kind of mayhem was let loose. Again, I say, this is not done in the name of God, as people say. It's not done in the name of religion. That's not an out that I think can be offered. It's done because of religion. It arises because of the very preachments that are in the text. And it relies ultimately and derives ultimately from the servile belief that our problems can be solved if we will only refer them upward to a supernatural despotism, to a dictator whose verdicts cannot be challenged, to a dictator who, so far from giving us free will, says we can be convicted of thought crime, sentenced to an eternity of punishment for things we may have thought in our sleep or thought and not yet done. As I say, I'll close on this, the emancipation of humanity demands first and foremost the emancipation of the idea of a supernatural dictator. Thank you.